Welcome, digital citizens, to another episode of Digital Guru with your digital guru, Shiva. In this episode, as on all episodes, we shed light on your digital world. And it's October. Do you know what that means? If you don't know what that means, comment below, right? It's not only the month of Diwali or Halloween, right? Around the world, it's also October is National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And the theme for 2024 is Secure Our World. Secure Our World is not just a catchy phrase or a catchy slogan. It's a call to action for each and every one. It's about recognizing that in our hyper-connected reality, cybersecurity is not just an IT issue, but it is an everyone issue. Cybersecurity is for everyone. Whether you're a government official, a small business owner, or just someone trying to protect your family photos, this month is about empowering you with the knowledge and tools to safeguard your digital life. To help me to give you this knowledge or the competencies to understand more about cybersecurity today, my guest is none other than Mr. Anil Persad. With an EY career in technology risk services spanning 2004 to present, Anil presently assumes the role of Associate Partner, Technology Consulting Services with specializations in cybersecurity and data privacy for EY Caribbean. He has supported both private and public sector clients in building strategies, architectures, and technical safeguards to enable cybersecurity to keep aligned to business needs. Prior to his consultancy experience at EY, he was involved in network and systems engineering and served within the education sector in the field of technology education. Anil is committed to the development of terms and the empowerment of people. He aspires to always present platforms and create opportunities that facilitate a harmonious ecosystem where everyone can grow and be cyber safe. Welcome, Anil.
Thank you.
So, it's a pleasure. As we mentioned there, you came from the educational field, which that's where we knew each other firstly, and then we studied together, computer studies, right?
Yeah.
And then we all went on our paths, and of course, this is where your path led you to being this cybersecurity consultant now, all right? And you work on many projects, many levels, and that's why I thought you were the best person to come in for our National Cybersecurity Awareness Month to advise on certain things. And as we mentioned in our pre-talk, in today's program, we're going to look at things from the big perspective of the country, the government, large corporations, come down to the smaller ones, the small companies and schools, and go to the personal homes and personal cybersecurity. So that way we can dispel many of the myths that they may have in cybersecurity, and we can promote a healthy digital life by promoting your cybersecurity as well, improving cybersecurity. So Anil, let's start with the big one, right? The government. We have heard that the 205 successful cyber attacks reported in Trinidad and Tobago. It's out there. These are the numbers we keep hearing, right? Reported for Trinidad and Tobago between 2019 and 2003. And that's a small period of time for that amount of attacks. On a scale of 1 to 10, how worried should we be? How worried should the government be? And is there a sense of urgency in securing government systems?
So it's a fair question. It's a relevant question for today. I'll be cautious about the metrics.
Of course.
And I know that specific metric to which you're referring is published by the TTC CERT. Yeah. Any entity that collects metrics in terms of cybersecurity and the number of breaches or attacks would tell you that it is not what is said it is.
What is said
right?
it is, yeah, exactly.
It's a lot more.
And more, yeah.
And there's a simple reason for that. The legislative landscape and those thrust or pushes from the legislators, the law, doesn't force a company in today's world,
Right.
especially regionally here and specifically in Trinidad, to disclose a cybersecurity attack, a successful one.
Yes.
So the truth of the matter is, most companies would do it if they know inevitably that it's going to get out into the public.
Mm-hmm.
So good governance will tell you that you should,
Mm-hmm.
and some companies do, others don't. And I can attest to that simply because I am involved a lot sometimes in looking at specifically at the details within the breaches, understanding the whole anatomy of it, how it happened,
Yes.
where things went wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and what could have been done better.
Right.
So I do see a lot more than you would probably see in the newspaper.
Of course.
So it's a very important fact to maintain. How concerned should we be? We should, worried would not be the term I would use as well. Concern would be more like it. But I do come around to using a term like exercising prudence. So you need to be cautious, as we all should.
Mm-hmm.
You would probably hear me during our dialogue this afternoon, Pandit Shiva. I'll always make the analogy with the individual
Mm-hmm.
and the entity. If I were to ask someone, what's your treasured asset?
Mm-hmm.
Persons, some people may say it's their car and their house, but most people I know would say it's their family, their children.
Yeah.
And those are the things that you would want to secure.
Things that you value.
Value the most.
So
That's an
value
asset
most.
to you.
Mm-hmm.
So
You could replace the cars and so on. But
Easily.
your family.
easily. Entities in business should understand and put good practices and good governance, good monitoring mechanisms around those prized assets, as we do for our families. You don't send your children out in the middle of the night, in the middle of the streets, all over insecure areas, etc., etc. So it's important that you know and understand how things move, what is happening out there,
Yes.
and how to put security safeguards around those assets. Just as you would apply to your home, it should be applied to the entity. If we have a mindset like that, and we should in today's world, simply because whether you think you're not out there, physically driving out the door or a gateway and walking the streets, you actually are when you pick up a device.
Yes.
So it's being out on the highway, the internet highway in this case.
Super highway.
So just as you would be out in your car with your children out in the streets, you are actually out on the highway when you jump on a device.
Mm-hmm.
And just as you would apply the rules of the road
Yeah.
and good diligence when you drive, you should apply the good diligence around managing those assets. Your computer, your laptop, your phone, your cameras in your home, right? All these are part of an ecosystem that they're all connected. We should be concerned because the more we evolve and the more we adopt the use of these devices, the more vulnerable we become.
Of course.
We have what we call, and in cybersecurity, especially for like my team members who would do ethical hacking, there's a terminology called attack surface area. The attack surface area would be all of those points that you can be attacked.
Devices,
And I'll be honest with you, you have many more attack points than you think you do.
Right. So in terms of, you mentioned the numbers or the statistics really higher than what is reported. I'm thinking back, things like health and safety might be in the same kind of category, where companies don't want to make their numbers look bad or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
What kind of counter do we have to encourage people to report when they have cyber attacks?
The more we speak about issues, the better we are able to deal with them. If we mollycoddle certain things that, that are significant issues to us, and we take it behind the curtain and try to deal with it, we don't have the benefit of understanding what our neighbor did. Or we can't look at statistics collectively and make better decisions. So it's important that the numbers come out, the people come out, and we deal with it in a more holistic manner.
Yeah.
When that is done, you actually have a more unified strategy in combating those bad guys.
Yeah.
That's very important. I do believe that it's getting a lot better than what it was a year or 2 years back.
Yeah.
Right? We do see a lot more of it. I am fortunate to deal with a lot of companies throughout the Caribbean and on a wider scale across the globe. And we do see companies taking good steps to good governance.
Right.
Right? They understand things that they must do as a responsible company. And one of it is being responsible around cyber. And if there are issues to deal with, bring it out, deal with it on top of the table.
Nice. So I'm really glad to hear, well, at least people are coming out and reporting, because as you said, that's very important in terms of the good guys beating the bad guys, when it comes down to that. The good guys have to keep together to keep the bad guys out. So with, as we see in sci-fi movies, we always see, the AI taking over, right? In reality, how are state-level systems preparing to counter sophisticated threats such as deepfakes and AI-generated phishing?
Okay.
That's where we're headed.
It absolutely is. And technology, like it was, somebody gave me an analogy or just a parallel. They said, if you existed in 1995, you were probably a little boy back then. What would be a big revolution for you? And the internet revolution came, right? Early 2000s, late 90s. AI is actually the next big revolution. Right? It's going to change the world in a way we can't imagine, and within a time frame that we can't even fathom. That's the reality behind it. Many things would be depleted or become obsolete, simply because things can be done a lot faster, with a lot more intelligence, with an extremely fantastic output. Right? You can get it in an amazingly short time. How does that apply to cyber and technology? Well, just like the good guys use technology, AI, to make the outputs faster to bring them to the table, the bad guys leverage it as well. And you would hear AI or artificial intelligence and machine learning. They're not exactly the same, but for all intents and purposes, we can use them synonymously. What that does, it's almost a cycle of self-learning. Right? The computer can teach itself. The machine itself can have that cycle of continuous learning if it's coded or if the algorithm works like that. And I'm fortunate to have played around a lot with AI and so on. And we have built a couple of GPTs and so on. And it's amazing how you can train these to train itself. And so that has an enormous amount of potential if you think about it. And if a bad guy figures an interesting way to do that, he can make whatever he does as a profession for himself, he can make that work for him. It simply means that somebody who's lurking out on the internet, trying to understand where vulnerabilities are, trying to attack somebody across the globe, an entity or a country, they can do that a lot faster. They can do it with a lot more accuracy and with probably a better success rate, more than likely. Good? So we see that things that were traditionally a guy sitting behind a laptop, and you would see that as an image of a hacker. It's no longer that, right? We can write code, we can write lots of programs to do that for us. And we don't attack a single entity out there at the same time. And when I say we, I mean the bad guys. And what they would tend to do is look at a mass. You can do 100,000 target points at the same time in a matter of seconds, right? With that level of automation. It sounds frightening, but that's the reality with the revolution in which we're experiencing now. Especially
like I've seen, these instances where they use the AI with the deepfakes, such as impersonating someone you may know, their voice or their tone, and you get a phone call from them. It really is scary, as you say.
Absolutely.
And where do we go though in getting people to identify if it's real or not? If you get a call saying it's your mother and you get a flat tire and to come now to this location, how do we deal with that?
So, I mean, it's a good question, but the same thing that works for the bad guys can work for the good as well. And that's where the revolution is good, and we have to direct it, we have to regulate it. Where we go is this, and where we have been going is this. We use the same technology to develop our tools or resources that help protect us. So if you look at your laptop here, you would have certain security measures. Well, I hope everybody does. security solutions, endpoints they call them sometimes, antivirus traditionally as you would know it. And it's supposed to be so intelligent to not only understand if somebody's trying to get into it, but if there's something in it that's malware,
fishy,
it's supposed to be intelligent enough to say, hey, I'm behaving in an awkward way.
So maybe
something
pick
is
up on
wrong.
if it's coming from an IP somewhere else.
Exactly.
And that kind of thing.
So there's different use of AI, but AI can be used in all technologies. You give the example of deep fakes. That's a hard one to combat.
Yeah.
And I can tell you in most instances, unfortunately, Pandit Shiva, the bad guys always tends to be a little bit further than the good ones. So, and that's how the world of cybersecurity always was. So if I can just stray a little bit from a cybersecurity standpoint, usually it's the vendors themselves and you know, some of the large-scale vendors, the Microsofts and the Googles and so on, they may only become aware of vulnerabilities on the platform after somebody breaks it. Right? And then there's a period within which they have to correct that or put a patch in place. Right? So it has always been like that. But fortunately, you know, with the advent of AI, the tools, the security mechanisms, the defense mechanisms that exist can be a lot more intelligent. It can be a lot more sensitized to develop things like anomalies and so on, as strange behavior, which may be symptomatic of something, you know, bigger to come. So you may be able to plug something before it actually does occur.
Okay. So we see the AI working on for us too. Right?
It can and it should.
It should, yeah. I think that definitely that's how we head in. So when major corporations, and I know in Trinidad we have seen some major corporations and institutions such as National Insurance Board and the Telecommunication Services of Trinidad and Tobago, TSCT, hit with cyber attacks. What are the ripple effects for national security and for our economy? They must have some kind of ripple effects when these large corporations who handle so much data, personal information that they have, you know, what are some of the ripple effects that can or may happen with that, with the economy and for...
So it is multi-pronged. Take the entities as well, and you've called two there. They did hit the media. Like I did say before, many don't reach on the media. The fact is, when that happens, you use the word, I believe you use the word cripple. It does cripple the entity itself, as one. Right. So the entity shuts down for a while. Right? It's almost like you can't use your home anymore until it becomes sanitized and you rebuild and all of these things. That takes some time. I don't think that's the bad part of it, to be honest. If you did plan well, you should be able to respond to that, right? I think there's a bigger thing at play here. You have information leaving an organization. You give the example of, you know, data going out, and that's a fact. If I were to tell you that there's a lot more that was leaked out than we think, right? Not just from one or two of the breaches you spoke about. There's a lot more out there on the darknet and so on that exist that we can mine and try to figure out what's there, and we can even pay for some as well. And the bad guys do pay for it. I think that's a level of damage that's probably not even understood at the point in time in which we exist now. I mean, all of your information, those of your that of your family and relatives, and a big chunk of the country, it's sitting out there, and some people have taken snippets of it and they sell it or they just share it freely. It does put, if you take an asset, especially something that what we tend to term as critical infrastructure, like telecom, like your water authority, like your electricity commission, if those entities which run critical national services are breached and attacked, that cripples an entire country. You probably would have heard about
those movies when they're shutting down whole blocks.
Good.
Major cities.
It has actually happened many times in reality as well. You would have heard, I don't know if you did, but there's a colonial pipeline attack in the US. So a pipeline that took gas from one part of the United States to the other part. Now, the pipeline itself wasn't attacked, but the systems actually around it. So the IT guy or the hacker can't stop the thing from flowing. But if you shut down the systems that regulate how it does, you actually in effect do. Good? And you can turn off, turn on valves.
Valves.
And you know, like, it's scary.
We
like
channel it to somewhere else.
When we do our work with ethical hacking, and we see and we demonstrate how we can do these things, people get really scared. The company directors, everybody runs crazy now. But that's the reality of it. And to know and understand how or what your critical assets are, your national critical infrastructure is important. I don't believe that all of it has been clearly marked out at this stage. We vulnerable as a country. We are just like most other countries out there. Have some of these national infrastructure components been attacked? Yes. Did we get it bad? I would say no. Right? Can we? I would say absolutely yes.
Yeah.
You do see it played off a few years ago in the elections when there were, and I can't say this because I do believe that it was said publicly in the open forum from the United States when there was there were attempted breaches.
Right. Yes.
And the president came out and said, we will respond with proportionate force. And what that means is that we will demonstrate to you that we can do exactly what you're doing.
Okay.
There's a concept called cyber warfare.
Right.
The way wars, were traditionally done with, your arms and the big tanks and so on. That has changed a lot, as you recognize.
Yeah.
Nuclear weapons are there, but there's also the ability to use these.
Now,
right? And cyber warfare is where this matters, right? These things are controlled by computer systems. Those things need to be properly segmented, properly segregated, properly monitored. You can't take chances with highly sensitive assets, especially those that protect your critical infrastructure. So you got to know and understand the critical infrastructure. You got to find mechanisms to protect them, and you need to be able to respond if they are, in fact, attacked or breached.
So in terms of, you mentioned the word there. Before we continue, I think it will be good for the audience that looking on to understand when we spoke about the dark web. You could explain to them exactly what the dark web is, because many people, because it's the dark web and it's kind of like secret and not everyone can get in and whatever.
Yeah.
Explain what that is.
Okay, sure, no problem at all. And I guess having a foundation in education, which I'm always very proud of.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm always very.
You cannot take the educator out of
I'm always very, specific about terminologies we use. People use and reuse and even misuse different types of terminologies. Yes. But if we think about the internet, I would say there are 3 layers. Right, so the internet, the first layer on top, which is the one we all navigate, we call it the surface net. Surface net is everything that you can see through your web browser, your Chrome, your Safari, etc. It's available, it's publicly available. Anybody can just go on unauthenticated and browse and do your searches, etc. That's the surface net. Is there a lot of risk there? Absolutely, right? People are just browsing. It's almost like going to the mall.
Yeah.
And, a few billion people there. There's a layer just below that, right? That's the layer in which you have to authenticate to reach. So it's not open to everybody. You have to authenticate. So you identify yourself and you get there. It's like if you're signing on or you sign on to a bank account.
And you have.
That's usually a layer lower than the surface net. The terminology we usually associate with that traditionally, and I'm being very cautious with terminology, it's called the deep net.
Okay.
So the deep net is just below the surface net. Got to authenticate. It's once you're legit, you have access there.
You have access.
And there's something called the dark net, right? So I call that the deep web and the dark net, and I get beaten up for it sometimes. But the deep net, the internet, right? The public highway, deep web and dark net. The dark net is an area that traditionally doesn't have all the rules. It's very difficult to trace. You have to use particular types of browsers to get onto the dark net. And what that does, there's a level of anonymity inside there. So any person who's basically navigating the dark net, you're going to see things that will probably scare you. I can tell you the dark net was actually built by the security services in the US for a particular legitimate purposes, right? It was, I believe, initially used to spy on those persons who are, underworld. Soon, of course, the bad guys catch on and we could use it for bad stuff too. And you would hear about the Silk Road, where they actually did some drug trading there.
Okay.
Well, the Silk Road is a real passageway.
Passageway.
But the Silk Road on the dark net was utilized for drug trafficking.
Oh.
And later on, they started to use it for a host of illegitimate purposes, including trading of arms and ammunition, trading of people. People were actually sold on the dark net. Wow. And there's still a great degree of illegal activity going on there right now. Again, like I said, through a regular computer, you can get on there. It's nothing that I'd advise people to do, but being in cybersecurity, we have to understand what goes on there. So we have that level of intelligence to be able to combat threats coming from the darknet. Usually when there's a breach, whatever asset that the attacker might have stolen, he harnesses the darknet to be able to trade on that.
Oh, to find his
market,
His market. Okay, all right. So I guess I hope that explains a lot for the viewers in terms of the internet and how many different layers. Because when I teach about the internet at the tertiary level, and we just teach them that it's just an interconnected computer. It's a physical network, and the web is just how you interact with that physical network.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So these different layers now of the physical network that are existing. So in terms of how prepared are we? And when we say we're talking the Caribbean and Trinidad and Tobago more specifically, right? To handle cross-border, because we talk about the dark web, the dark net and all that. Handle cross-border cyber threats, and what international partnerships do we have in leveraging to help with that?
Again, I do believe there's a large gap to close in terms of our preparedness. And the evidence shows it, right? We have companies being breached, we have people being breached. We are not as prepared as we should be, but I do believe directionally things are moving. Not at the pace that it should be. Take for instance, the legislation.
Right.
If we look at cybercrime legislation, it's not there, right? It's whatever is there is very dated. You have laws going back, Data Protection Acts going back to 2011. There's a Computer Misuse Act of 2000.
Yeah.
So you would see things like that, and the legislative framework needs to be revisited. Having said that, though, those are not the only regulatory pushes. So, for example, you do have the central bank, which they impose particular guidelines on the banking sector. So they have to lift their game. They have to be able to demonstrate that they're in compliance with all the regulations, etc. Right? But I think the whole national legislative framework needs to be revisited so that these things can actually start taking shape. And companies, small to large, they take responsibility for it, including public sector companies. But certainly we are not where we need to be. You do see, if you go into certain types of companies, a lot of them, they generally will have gaps that are difficult to close. They're not well sponsored. They're not well understood. You don't have proper oversight and governance around them. And if your people are failing, you're going to find, when they say, if you don't have sufficient manpower inside there to be able to even oversee, you're going to find operational gaps. And it's almost like leaving a hole in your fence.
Right. But there's from exactly what you said there, from my early cybersecurity training, you have the technical side, you have the policy side, then you have the people side.
That's right.
All have to be, properly managed and educated, especially when it comes to the policies and all these things. And so I think what I have seen, much effort is always put into the technical things and putting in technical things to save us and to protect us. But very little, or as you say, the policies and the legislation take forever to be formalized and then to be training the companies. And that brings us actually into, as we move from the governmental area to the small businesses and schools and so on, brings us into that, because they are the ones who need these sort of policies in place. I mean, recently with COVID-19, a lot of schools were now allowing technology to come into the schools.
Yeah.
But how many of them actually had policies or even in infrastructure to protect them from vulnerabilities of hackers coming in. And we did see some class bombings and so on of hackings of classes, some Zoom hacking and so on happening because, as you said, the bad guys were always looking for an opportunity. And here it was that they were using the security loopholes in common softwares being used and exploiting it. And so in the middle of a class while teaching, you see some explicit something coming up in the middle of the class and all these sorts of things actually happened, So looking at it now from the SME side, small and medium-sized enterprises and so forth, many SMEs think they are too small of a target, right? How do we convince them that in a hacker's eye, they are not a small fry, but a delicious upsized combo? More than what they think. They think they're too small to be hacked. How can we convince them that that's not the case?
So Pandit, let me draw an analogy. And if you're as old as I am, you would remember. You would remember when this whole kidnapping spree started in Trinidad.
Yes.
And I can tell you it many decades ago, right? And the kidnappers would request $100,000, $200,000, $1 million. I don't know if you saw what happened after 5, 7, 8 years. It went down to 10,000.
Right now they're robbing people for $27.
There we go. No, there's a message inside there that we need to pay attention to, right? If you can do, regardless of your practice, and you understand how businesses work, I can take this and I can sell it for $1,000. I might sell one a month, right? Yeah. And if it was very expensive to make, it's I could turn over a profit. I may not turn over one in next 2-3 months. If I can make 1,000 of those and turn over a smaller profit, I'll do good business, right? If I can turn over a great magnitude of them, you'll realize that if I set my target small and go for volumes, right? The business is there, and the bad guys think so as well. I can tell you there's a trend of moving from large organizations to smaller ones.
So they're more vulnerable.
I can tell you that the ransomware, ransom request would be several million US dollars in the past. I have seen low as 10,000 and 5,000 US dollars, right? And some companies actually pay it. That trend actually should speak volumes to the same posture that you described of companies. They are moving towards smaller organizations that would be scared, that would know how to react and respond, and would probably have a greater propensity or inclination to pay. We do see that that's happening. They're doing a lot more with technology and AI and all of these wonderful things. They're attacking a lot more companies, especially with the medium to small ones that don't play special emphasis on technology security. So that it's a posture that is very dangerous, right? And it's relevant for Trinidad and Tobago in particular, and for all companies really. I don't know there's a single company out there that's not using technology, that doesn't have information out there or assets out there. If you do get crippled, a simple thing like losing the entire books, right? Your book of business, and some people don't have proper resources to be able to make sure these things are secured or at least duplicated. You have your backups, all of these things. If those mechanisms are not thought up, designed, and put in place, and you do have to suffer a cyber attack, you probably might be left ransomware, might be left up with no option but to pay the ransom. That's a posture that probably should be revisited. I do believe there's a need for education.
Of course.
I can share with you that I sit as an advisor to the TTMA, Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association, from a cybersecurity standpoint. And companies are coming out more to ask, what should we do? What can we do? Because we are worried. And we know some of them have been attacked, by the way. Again, you wouldn't hear of all of it because they don't have to publicize it, but they do have to respond in whatever way they can. So there's the sounding is out there. People are talking about it. And I think there needs to be a little more formality in the way the messages are carried across, and even what these companies can do.
Because when you look at it, I always say, even as, when I give an example from a pundit point of view, in terms of if the rich man give $1 and a poor man give $1, which dollar is worth more.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same dollar, but to the big corporations, that dollar is just a little drop in the pond. But to the small man, that dollar, when you have to you lose that dollar. That's sometimes your whole life.
Big
works,
slice of your profit there,
right?
Whole
slice of your profit. So I think they really need to understand. Small businesses, we need to understand what they have is worth something. Those cyber attackers, they actually know how much you have, so they know how much you ask for.
Yeah.
Right? They're not going to ask for more than they don't know you have. They know so much.
That's right.
That they ask in proportion.
And many of them believe that even cyber and cybersecurity, they can't afford it. It's something that's elusive for them. It's too expensive. What should they do? Should they just pack up shop and go plant tomatoes? You need a book of business or an IT system to account for it as well. The government last year in its budget allocated a certain amount of funds for businesses across Trinidad and Tobago. If you're a registered company, you can apply for a cybersecurity tax incentive.
That's regardless of the size of
the company. Whatever investment you are making, you have to get it passed through a process, right? iGovTT would be the one to actually, pronounce on it. But there's a process for doing it, and I encourage everybody. You have your small businesses. Just please go online. Just type in cybersecurity, Trinidad and Tobago cybersecurity tax incentive, and you'll be guided. You do have to almost get it pre-approved. And the tax incentive is up to 500,000 TT dollars, and it only goes up until 2025. So I do encourage companies to take advantage of that. Go out there, you make an investment, you can claim it back. You can have tax claims, so it comes back to you if it is within that range. You're good to go. It is something that's one of the good things that I've seen.
Right.
And there are others. You have people like you, Pandit, who you go out there and you spread the word, the importance of cyber and cybersecurity. Some corporations, we do try to do a lot of public speaking, have that public education going out there. But those things are necessary. But that's one aspect of it. Information is one, but then you need action behind it, and investment. I'm
really glad you said, because prior to our conversations, I didn't know about that tax relief or that tax break, right? Would you know if it is, like as we spoke, cybersecurity entails all these three areas of the technical, the policies, and the training for the people. Would you know if that covers all, or just the technical aspect?
They speak about solutions, right, and infrastructure, I believe. Right. But I do believe if you put your case forward, and there should be some technology component to it, right? So it's not just like a consultancy. It has to be. There needs to be a solution at the end of it. Yeah. So do look at the options and do have discussions, right? Through, if you can locate the site. Put a case forward, and they will go through an analysis and determine, you do qualify on what you're looking for, and worst case, you don't get all of what you're asking. But you do get a piece of it.
A portion will be covered, whatever is under the agreement for that. Okay, good. That really is, I hope, the viewers, because I didn't know anything about it. I don't know if there's any governmental promotions for people to be aware of it, maybe through the Chamber of Commerces or something, I don't know. But hopefully we have more people. We do have a lot of chambers of commerce that watch the program, so hopefully from this they'll be aware of it, and
I'll be happy to have a conversation as well. Always happy to share that kind of information.
That's good.
And I'm pretty sure I can get persons within the public sector who know and understand how these, just the applications process works.
Application process.
To get them to accompany me to bring that information.
That's definitely important. Looking forward to that. What role does, this big one, this one close to my heart, right? What role does employee training play in cybersecurity for SMEs? And are local businesses investing enough in the area? And I think that's why I asked what areas it covers in that, because this is an area, I think, definitely, as you say, the education of people and teaching people how to combat or to recognize, even if you're being under a cyber attack, like with phishing and so on. URLs, if it's a legit URL, those simple things like that as well. Are we investing enough in the area, or are we just hoping for the best?
So, I mean, you move from person to person and company to company. You do get a different posture. Some companies do place a lot of emphasis on the people side of things. I can't tell you the people for a long time. The people were the weakest link in the chain.
Of course, I actually wrote a paper on that. For the Ministry of National Cybersecurity.
People call me an ultimate optimist. Strangely enough, but I do believe that's changing. I believe sometimes the technology feels. The technology has evolved a lot, but people have also evolved. And in some companies that you go to, you do find a lot of rigor behind the people education part of it. The executives in a company, they are usually the ones targeted for phishing because they can make the decisions, they can sign off checks or do wire transfers.
But it comes from below sometimes.
Sorry?
I said the attack comes from below sometimes.
Sometimes it comes from there. So there is a greater need for education, but you do see a lot of it. We tend to drop our guards in the interest of getting the job done. And what does that mean? We go to work, we use a laptop, we connect our corporate network, and we do work. What we don't know is part of our responsibility of delivering that work is also applying good security measures in the way you interact with your devices. That needs to be understood. You can't use, if you connect it to a corporate network and you're on a laptop, and you open your browser and you go to all kind of crazy websites that, really illegitimate content, malicious content, and antivirus and so on, maybe not really up to date. Malicious viruses can get onto your machine. When you make a connection out on the internet, that's a channel that's opened, a communication channel where there's information flowing to the internet and back from the internet. It's almost like having a conversation with somebody by a gate, and you're talking over the gate there. Is a gate sufficient to block a malicious attack? Not at all. If you are asked to do certain activities which may seem suspicious, click on a link, for instance. We know that one very well. Or you get an email, you're winning, $1 million.
But you have to send so on. So
just send your bank account information. So there are different schemes and tactics that these bad guys use. But the aim is to really get your people educated to be able to sense things like that. It's not an easy thing because I can tell you a phishing email from 4 or 5 years ago looks very different to how it looks today. It's very convincing today. Even I sit in my company and we get phishing tests all of the time. And there were a couple of times where I did click. Right? And that happened because there was haste in me trying to execute some of my operational tasks. But then it teaches you that you need to step back and understand I have a responsibility when I use these devices. And if I do take my eyes off of that, that target, if all I focus on is that and I don't pay attention to what's happening around me, I could be blindsided. So it's very important that we keep users alert. A lot more is happening. There are tools where you can educate users. Pandit Shiva, you know about children education in the school and education with adults as well. And it's important that we always keep them attuned to what's happening. It's being aware of your environment. We talk to our children and tell them, be aware of people who are strange, people who act a certain way, people who communicate different things. We need to take care of our users like that. It's not where it needs to be.
So that's definitely, as you mentioned, the people are the weakest link. You remind me of a paper in 2017 that I wrote for the University of Southern Caribbean, right? And National Security, they came together. And it was human factor, the weakest link in cybersecurity. And, I always use the example of you might find a pen drive. You have all kind of things, and you just pick up this pen drive from outside the door of the company, and you go in, oh, who is this? Plug it in, and that is it. Hackers in, right? So simple things like that. The people are the weakest link, and as you mentioned, in schools. So that's something I've been also doing for the past 10 years or so, right? Educating digital citizenship
Yeah.
And the part of the digital citizenship that we do, which is part of Harvard University Common Sense Education, is teaching all these kinds of things about private information, how to secure yourself and all these kinds of things at that young age, because they too are involved with the device. I know we're talking about schools here as well with the small businesses. So these programs have to be, and I've been an advocate for it. Hopefully, as you say, we see some changes now with programs like these when it goes out there, that people get more aware. It's awareness we're building, and they want to have these programs. So I've always been available, just as yourself, you made yourself available to those who need the education. I'm available for the schools at that level,
Absolutely.
To start building that kind of education so that they're aware of certain things to look for. And that's where I always believe the digital citizenship and all that needs to be in place from a young age. The younger, the better. Because as soon as they enter now with technology, since COVID again, technology is even more a part of the school system, And
it is.
So definitely we need to head in that way. So back to the businesses now. So in 2023, Trinidad and Tobago specifically saw attacks targeting various industries, right? Including manufacturing, food and beverage, telecommunications, insurance, oil and gas, and retail. In a small market like ours, or a small country like ours, right? Our local businesses are aware of specific threats. So we could speak specific now. So what are some of these specific threats that within these sectors or these small businesses? Or is there just a lack of intelligence sharing? I mean, you spoke a lot about already about the education, right? You mentioned things like ransomware. So if you could give a little idea now, what are some of the most common threats small businesses especially should look out for? Like the terminology like ransomware, you could give a little more explanation on ransomware and other things that you think are important that they should be aware of.
Sure, no problem. I mean, some persons, and we have a wide range of persons who actually utilize information devices, ransom, and they have different levels of understanding of what those threats are out there. Ransomware is just one of those many threats.
Okay.
If you think about a threat, just like we have threats of hurricane and all of these things, there are things that can cause their potential harm.
Of course.
They can bring harm to you and your family and your assets. You do have internet threats, and ransomware is one of them. I actually don't advocate that persons look at individual threats in isolation.
Of course.
It doesn't happen like that. Almost every successful cyber attack that we looked at and we had to deconstruct, it used a combination of different threat vectors. So for example, they may use phishing first, get malicious malware inside of the network after you have successfully phished someone. And phishing is a terminology I'm hoping that your viewers out there. Right. So it's different. It's just like phishing, where you cast something out there and see if somebody bites. When there's PHISHING, a malicious actor, we say a malicious actor, a cyber attacker on the internet. He may target an individual or a whole group of persons, and he's going to see who will bite. So he's going to throw you a little line and see if you will bite. It might be a link that he sends to you. And if you do bite, he now has the option to reel you in. Or does he do that? He may send additional things for you or encourage you to perform an action like clicking a link. When you do that, you open a communication channel. If you have a level of administrator access on your machine, he might be able to capitalize on that. Right? It's like opening a tube or channel, and he can send something in, and he does. And some of it may be malware, which can be ransomware. What does ransomware do? It basically encrypts all of your hard drive, as we call it. It encrypts the device that you're working on. It can spread to servers and the entire network. When it encrypts it, you can't use it, you can't utilize it, you can't read anything from it. And the only person who can decrypt it, which is make it usable again, is the attacker. So he says, pay me, and I will give you a key to decrypt it. And some companies have paid. There are big companies out in the US, government sector, public sector companies who have had to pay because they said, I don't know any other way to get back my information apart from decrypting it. Only you can help me. So those are two really what we call attack vectors. Right? But there are others, but they mainly comprise of malware or malicious type software that can cause harm to your computer. They will use different ways to try to get it onto your computer. There are, and I don't want you to believe, or the viewers to believe, that the internet sleeps. It doesn't. The highway is always open. There's always a proliferation of attempted attacks. Imagine cars consistently driving around your house throughout the night looking to see if you have a gate open.
Who leave a gate open.
Right? Or come and shake the gate to see if it will open. The internet works like that.
That's happening these days.
There's malicious activity continuously, 24/7. And if you go out in the morning, you look at your firewall, which is the gate, you're going to see lots of bumps and so on it, right? Or attempted knocks. Those things, they are there, they are relevant, but we still need to understand, that the gate, it's there, it remains sound. We keep on checking the hinges, making sure the remote continues to work. What I can tell you is that we put up infrastructure, we put people in motion, and we don't continuously have that cycle of making sure they're working, keeping them updated, and just looking to see if anything is wrong with them. It's almost like maintenance, right? You have a car, you drive it every day, you maintain it. Your house, you have to maintain it, paint it, get rid of the moss, etc. All the IT equipment that's there needs maintenance, right? All the people that are there, they need maintenance. And that needs to be continuously configured to be able to combat all of these threats, because the threats keep on evolving. They get very, very much more sophisticated. You guys won't drive around your yard alone, right? They might have 10 people around looking through fences and doing all different sorts of things. They can attack you with drones above.
Right.
I'm just drawing a parallel.
Yeah, so you can understand.
But that's the reality. The threats are actually continuously out there. That's my message. And we need to be able to protect and combat. There are different ways to approach that, and I don't know if we can maybe jump into that, right? What does a company do? So we spoke about little snippets of it, and somebody might say, "But I don't know. I don't have the intelligence to do that." And maybe my IT guy, I'll just talk to him. Well, this is almost like a spoiler alert. IT guys are not cybersecurity guys.
Exactly.
There's an assumption that the IT guy is the cybersecurity guy, and that's where things went wrong for a long while. Cyber and cybersecurity, it's a different skill set. It's a different discipline altogether. I've always looked for ways to simplify that agenda. And I can tell you, go and consider some of the ISO frameworks. Sounds fancy, right? ISO international standards. Look at a NIST framework that the US guys use, the government would use. That's complex, right? I would want to say maybe there are three contexts that we should consider. In a very, very simplistic way, we should be threat aware. Threat aware is being conscious or cognizant of the things that are going on around you that could cause potential harm, right? And how do you do that? You do that with your people. You do that with your tools. Firewalls, make sure your people are aware. Hey, somebody's trying to do something bad. I just need to be aware. While I'm working, the firewalls, all of the IT stuff does what it's supposed to do. You also have to be able to threat respond.
Right.
So we have to be aware, but we have to be able to respond. What does that mean? It means that if somebody were to actually try to push down your gate, the firewall will stand up. If somebody, not only being aware of it in mind, but being aware of it to be able to respond and push it back, almost repel it. So that's a part of it, that even your people, your tools, you probably hear about people process technology. Right? So think about people process technology to be aware, people process technology to be able to respond and repel. And the last part of it is people process technology to be able to recover. To recover simply means if they did get in, and if they wipe out my entire network, they destroyed my entire organization, I have mechanisms in place to be able to build back. And when the ransomware guys come and they say, you pay me $10,000 or $100,000, you say, no, please, just go away. Don't even respond to them. But you have all your backups, you have infrastructure that you can bring up back. You have tried it, you have tested it, all of your people have planned it properly. And in 6 hours time, you're back on the road again, stronger. Right? So I think if we simplify our approach to that, maybe we can understand it a lot better and deal with those high priority items. Invest in them, but make sure you have dealt with the people, process, and technology.
So as you mentioned, invest there, right? Because I know, like for schools, of course, I know, and for small businesses, budget is always an issue. What's your advice to them?
So, one of the things I gave you the good option of going out and harnessing the tax incentive, right?
Right. So you have an assistance.
So there you go. You can start from nothing and have $500,000 to invest. TT dollars, by the way. So it's not much. You'll realize as you make investments, that's depleted. I do encourage companies, just as you set aside. So first of all, most companies are, there's an economic gain to it, right? You want to turn over a profit. You need to understand that there's an investment in doing that. Whether it's raw materials that you buy, if you're in manufacturing and so on, if you're in the banking or financial services sector, you need to invest in different types of things, right? IT systems, different technology, people as well, right? Those who are intelligent, who understand financial models. But it's important that you consider as part of your expenditure or investment, the protection of your critical assets. So it comes back to knowing your critical assets. Understand what does it cost you to put a product on the table. It's not only what's costing in the raw materials and transport. It's what it costs from an IT infrastructure standpoint and a cybersecurity standpoint. It needs to be factored in. It's a must. And if you don't think it's important, get rid of all your IT stuff and see what your output will be.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So that covers that. In terms of as we move from the small business, if they need assistance, are there organizations like yourself or maybe consultants like yourself that are available to these small businesses that can assist them in the process of becoming more secure?
There are. Even so, if we take private sector, for instance, I mean, we do have lots of clients throughout Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean as a whole. They may not be very large companies, but we do maintain that part of our agenda is to really lift the cybersecurity posture across the country and really across the region and the globe. But definitely, I have skin in the game. I walk the lands of Trinidad and Tobago, so I'm very much interested in seeing everybody become aware and just the posture and the general cybersecurity health. The level of it is lifted here. So we do make ourselves available for conversations. We do speak with those public bodies, those professional organizations like ISACA, the Internal Auditor Institute, Internal Institute of Auditors, CTU, the Caribbean Telecommunications Union. We do get onto those forums in the effort of educating the public. But we do make ourselves available to be able to provide that guidance and support and assistance as well with companies who have put programs in place and want to improve them. And there is advice you can get from the public sector as well. I mean, the TTC cert has been there. It's still a small unit. I know that because I know the gentleman who leads it right now. But they are there and they have a particular agenda. And one of it should be policy making. But I do believe that they would be open to consultation as well. And they do have ministry set up like the Ministry of Digital Transformation. They do take cybersecurity to heart. So you do have avenues that you can explore, but it's important to shape what your target should look like and then put those building blocks in place.
To get the assistance accordingly. Yes. Right. Okay, good. So we spoke about ransomware, and you know, when, as I said, I wrote papers on those things already. When it comes to people, social hacking, you know, again, that's the more on the people side of things. The hackers now hacking the people and not the technology. And in those examples, I would have come across research in terms of a grandmother who had all the pictures of her children and grandchildren on her system, who was hacked and ransomware for that. And because that was worth so much to her, she paid the ransom because that was of value to her. Also, a student who had his thesis for his final PhD or whatever, you know, that was of value to him, and they hacked and they held that and say, well, okay, if you want this back, you have to pay. So it comes down to the average Joe, or the average person like me and you and, well, anybody, could be anybody. So I think that shows how severe this cybersecurity thing is and why everyone needs to be on board. You know, not just the corporations that we spoke about or the small businesses, but even down to the homes. So we're bringing it down to the homes now and individuals in terms of how exposed is the average citizen. You know, in Trinidad and Tobago, the Caribbean, as you say, when it comes to social engineering attacks through platforms like WhatsApp and Facebook and the social media, you know. Should we be worried about our aunties sharing the chain messages and so on, things like that?
So, again, being an ultimate optimist, I would say that has improved, and I always prefer to put a positive spin on it. Yes. It was in a very terrible shape about maybe 3-4 years ago. You would recognize that companies, those large social media companies, have been under scrutiny because they had fairly loose policies, right, to control people and what they share. But let's look at the people aspect of things first. We have a wider attack surface area than we think we do. We have shared much more information about ourselves than we think we have. And the reality is, if somebody were to actually do simple Google searches on you, if you were to do it on yourself, you might be surprised as to what's out there, right? Information that you may not even have consented to share. People may have it about you and they shared. Good. So it's fairly easy to find information about people in today's world. Anybody. Right? And that's true. The process, as you described it, Pandit, it's called social engineering. It's really the attack of the person, the social aspect, right, of this whole ecosystem where we use technology. But there's a lot floating out there, and the interesting thing about the information that you have shared out there, it never goes away. If you think there was
what goes online stays online. You know, we teach little kids that what goes online stays online.
It actually does. And you may have put something out on a platform, one of the social media platforms, and you deleted it, and you did a permanent delete, or you put it out on Facebook or somewhere. I don't think people understand that those things go into archives, and those things go into other social media platforms. So a platform can mine one platform, and that's how the social media companies actually got a lot of licks over the past few years. They had loose policies that they allowed external persons, large companies, to mine their data, and how much of it was actually mined, going and search. So it was supposed to be controlled. It's much more controlled today than it ever was before. But at the end of the day, people have shared a lot, and it's there and it never goes away. In fact, it's replicated more and more and more. So it's going to be there whether you think you have deleted.
Always have a backup to the backup to the backup to the backup.
Always. That's the reality. And if you know how to look, you can know how to find it, right? And you can get information about anything, anyone, any company. It's as simple as that. I usually show people very quickly on my laptop how quickly I can get information about a company. All its public-facing IPs. You were in telecom, Pandit, so you know and understand that. When you do that, you can actually get all the public-facing devices, everything that faces the internet. And if there's one vulnerability that's sitting there, it's going to show up on platforms like Shodan and so on, if you're familiar. So it's not difficult to get information about a company, about any person. The people who use social media, and I do stress a lot on social media because those are the platforms where we share data mostly. They don't, for a lot of intents and purposes, they are not aware of what they have shared. And we don't read policies. If we are signing up for a platform, we don't read the policy itself. But if you do look and read it properly, you'll realize you give them a lot of rights to your data, right?
Nobody reads the fine print.
Nobody does.
They just scroll down and put next.
Yeah.
I
and
agree.
maybe it's designed like that,
Designed
right?
like that, yeah.
You scroll because you have about 5 pages to read, which will take you 25 minutes.
Accept. And you go.
You accept everything, right? And you have just signed your life away. That happens in all of these platforms. And it's really amazing what's out on these platforms as well. So you do have a generation, maybe the older ones, who may have inadvertently shared stuff, right? But the younger generations, the Gen Zs and the millennials and so on, they have shared a lot. They've probably shared a lot more. That's out there, it's churning around. But it's also very dangerous to have that kind of information out there. Unfortunately, we don't have active data protection legislation in Trinidad and Tobago. There's a Data Protection Act. It's fairly dated. It's very dated. Right? The most modern legislation you're going to find in the European region, it's called GDPR, General Data Protection Legislation or Regulation. Barbados has adopted legislation in 2020, I believe. Guyana, 2023. Jamaica, 2019-20, around there. And I know that because we are building out, we are building out compliance to those laws, helping companies to get mature enough to be able to comply with the legislation. And all that legislation has said is that you need to have particular mechanisms in place to treat personal data that people have provided to you in a certain way, with respect, minimal amount of data, and wherever you put it and store it, you need to have protective mechanisms. If you take it and doing something else with it that they didn't authorize or consent to, you've breached the legislation. You can actually be fined or imprisoned. That's the reality. And the Caribbean is moving towards that kind of legislation. We did locally try to. There's a thrust to get a information commissioner appointed. And the legislation will be updated in Trinidad and Tobago, hopefully soon. I'm optimistic again, hoping for 2025. We see how that goes.
And in terms of, from my end, again, with the people and working with the younger ones, I think we always teach them about, first of all, the age for most of these social networks. Because at the primary school level, you will see children on Facebook and WhatsApp, but the age levels is actually 13 and 16 and so forth for these things. So, parents need to be a little more aware of those things. So the age, the legal age to be on these platforms, and for there's reasoning behind that. Why you should be of a certain age and responsibility.
Of course.
And then when we teach those older ones now who are on the platforms, like secondary schools and so on, we try to teach them about the privacy policies that you have control over in these social networks. And many people are not even aware that these things there until they're made known, like when it comes to one of the sessions or something, that these policies are there and you have control of who could see your information and when and where. I mean, it's on a lower level than what you're speaking about, but that these companies actually sell the information to have access to other companies, but at least they have some control that they're not even aware of. And we would like to promote more awareness programs like that, right? So when we spoke about, and AI comes up a lot because that is how we think. That's what, as you said, the next revolution in the IT world is AI, right? So AI now, when it comes to our homes, we're looking at AI, in shows you see, we know right now AI is big as digital assistants, but soon it will be digital assassins, right? So how do we protect ourselves without, and when I say ourselves, the average man in your home, how do we protect ourselves without becoming complete technophobes, that you don't want to touch, because we can't do that. We passed that stage where we can't be technophobes anymore. We have to use the technology, right? So how could we protect ourselves in the world of IoT, and your fridge could order things for you automatically when things going down, and smart homes, cameras, all these kind of things. How can the average person protect themselves? What is your advice to them in this world of AI and IoT and all this?
Well, first and foremost, I do believe that we should know and understand what we have signed up for, right? Maybe have an inventory of all your assets, or your camera systems, and understand the policies that you have signed on for. Right? Many people don't know that, but your cameras or your camera feeds actually around your house are available on the internet.
Yeah. Well,
right? You can,
especially the IP ones.
Yeah. and that's a sad thing. The company that you would have signed on to do the sign up, right, to be able to view your camera on your phone, they're not obligated to you in any form or fashion, right, to protect your privacy. So understand what you have signed on to, understand your ecosystem, as we call it.
Right.
All of those items where you have information stored, assets that you use, assets that you have positioned in your homes, in your cars. And it's a big trend with carjacking now, using the technology, right? Cars actually start through the computer, right? And there's a trend now, and they're trying to combat it. But it's something difficult to combat. I do say to minimize your footprint. Don't have 3 and 4 and 5 phones.
Right.
Right? You have opened yourself up
to more,
a lot wider.
Right.
You put more doors in your home, right? More windows open, and you may leave them open. That's one. But inventorize everything and try to reduce on your digital footprint. Right? That's usually helpful. Understand the policies that you have signed on to. Turn off your devices when you don't need them. Okay. This might sound scary, but if a laptop gets compromised, the hacker can turn on the camera on it, right? And that's the absolute truth. And we've done use cases, proof of concepts, or things like that. Why do we leave it on and open 24/7 if you're going to sleep for 7 or 8 hours, right? Shut it down, close the lid. That's a simple practice. The devices like these, you don't need to give it full authority to everything. You have an app that you install on your phone. Don't give it full access to your photos, your microphone, right? Yeah. It may give itself access when you least expect, right? Those are things that you have to be aware of. If we use it for our convenience, we should use it responsibly as well. And responsible use is something that is already not practiced, especially at the individual user end, on a personal level. It still amazes me how people walk around with 3 and 4 phones. Yeah, I barely manage one. But it's the reality, right? And you can imagine the amount of information you have replicated. You log into your email on this one and the next one, and you forgot about that one. Well, guess what? It's 2 places now, right? It's a complete copy of it in your mailbox there. Yeah. So your information gets duplicated multiple across the ecosystem. You will lose control eventually. We can only control those things that we know of, because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, because many people buying these smart TVs and so on now.
Yeah.
And not knowing that, okay, that has access to the internet as well. And the hackers have access to that to come into your network, into your home.
It does. And that's, I mean, there are so many cases out there where those things were actually breached. Right? And the reality
all these
is
different smart devices, not only TVs.
And the reality is persons just, they weren't even aware. If you go to the average householder,
they don't know.
They cannot tell you all the devices that have connected to the internet. Your Alexa, your Google Mini at home. Those things are very intelligent. Have you ever been using your phone or talking in the car to somebody and Siri answers? All right.
When you go on Facebook, you see an ads for whatever you talk about. You know?
Siri answers sometimes. I'm not speaking with you, right? And then I turn it off. So.
You see?
So that's the reality. We don't know our full exposure. And the only way you can do that is to really rethink and try to minimize it. Get rid of the fact.
And
you don't need all of it.
As you use the example of the many phones, so they don't, just for our viewers who may not understand, one of the ways you can keep yourself safe is from your software updates. Because you mentioned before, when there's a breach, they fix the loopholes, and so you get an update. So you have security updates, which are very important to update. So if you have 2-3 phones and you're updating this one, but you're not updating this one,
no, absolutely.
Then, as you say, that's the loophole right there that the hackers will hack in and you get that.
Very important, extremely important. Like, if you reminded me of that, every device that we have and we own and we use, it has software in it, right? It's a microcomputer. In some cases, a full computer, right? But there's software on it.
The firmware and so.
Firmware is there, and there's software sitting on top of that to enable you to be able to interact and use the device. Software by its sheer nature gets vulnerable as time rolls on, right? People find ways around the software to be able to breach it. Every software is prone to that. It's not one specific type of software. What the vendors for those softwares would do, they would develop patches and send it out. Updates, as you said, Pandit. If you don't do updates on your phones, guess what? Your phone remains without a software or without an update, and the software is vulnerable. What that means, when you're connected to a public network, you are vulnerable. If a bad guy is on, well, crapo smoke your pipe, as they say, right? That's the reality behind it. All softwares need updating, they need patching. If you are vulnerable with any one of the 25 items that you have on your in your ecosystem, you are vulnerable. You only need one loophole. Good. And if you get in there through that one loophole, you're inside the person's home. You have access to many things. That brings us
especially to the next question that I had here. Because I have, we know there are some efforts to address children's safety online. I have actually personally been trying to do that for the past 2 years, and it's going better. So is it going better or worse when it comes to the children's safety online, or are there real world solutions, or are we still playing catch up in the game of online when it comes to children's safety?
I think I don't like the direction in which that's going, actually. You gave a very good example. You said a company may say you have to be 15 or 18 or 12. I don't know the ages for these platforms. I'm not a social media user. But how do you verify that you are 12? Because you don't have an ID card.
They just change the date,
right? Or even 15 or 17. I don't know what those ages are. I'm pretty sure that's the regulators have put mandates for the companies to say that before you allow somebody to come on. But people can lie.
They just change the birth date.
And that's what they have to do. They don't have any way to verify that unless somebody complains about it. Right? There's AI in today's world that can do a little scan, a facial scan, etc. And then they do try to put mechanisms to verify that you are who you say you are. But the truth of the matter is, you have young people who are there, they don't understand the dangers, and they don't care to know either, right? Until they get into school and they go into the workplace, and your employer, before they employ you, they do a social media background search on you and realize, ooh, not good behavior, right? You don't belong in our company. Those things have a backlash. But it shows that somebody who is not mature enough, who is not responsible enough going into the highway, you wouldn't send your 5-year-old child in the middle of the road to play football. Cars pass, all right? And that's what, those rules are there for a reason. Unfortunately, it's not as enforced or monitored as it should be. So I think a lot more work can be done in that direction.
Yeah, especially as I mentioned before, there's an area I'm involved on the people side again, in terms of awareness programs, Safer Internet Day, for example, and in Trinidad, I think I mentioned to you before, trying to promote Safer Internet Day, which is the second Tuesday in the second month of the year, right? The second week of the second month of the year, which is normally around Carnival time for Trinidad and Tobago.
Not good.
So when Safer Internet Day is, the international body sends me all the resources to send out to schools, and I try to send them out, or I go on talk shows. I think you mentioned you saw me on somebody talk shows, and I'm trying my best to promote this is what we should do, build the awareness so that we could put things in place, we could have these safeguards implemented, It's a difficult thing. So I know, but we're still here. We're still fighting the fight, because we know at the end of the day, this is the direction, this is how we must go. We must have that education part for the people side of security that goes hand in hand. And what better time? Because as young as whatever age they are, they're swiping, they're using devices. Sometimes the kids might have 2-3 tablets. One by the grandmother, one by the grandmother, one by the babysitter, one by different places. And again, it comes back to that same point what you raised before. You just open up holes, more devices, the surface area that you mentioned. Right?
Yeah, the attack surface area. You gave a good example, Pandit, a few minutes ago. You spoke about what happened during COVID.
Yeah.
So we went from being unprepared onto the information highway.
Full.
Without having the tools and the knowledge to be able to navigate that uncertain
I call
place.
it competency. Because to be competent, you need the knowledge, skill, and attitude.
There we go. I stand corrected. You're absolutely right? The reality is that if you were to look at the metrics, and I have looked at them, there was a spike, tremendous spike in terms of successful cyber attacks when COVID did hit.
Right.
Why? Many, many more people went online than can ever be imagined.
And not doing updates and not following,
well, first of all, not even understand what they should do.
Yeah.
Companies went online without having proper infrastructure in place to be able to run things like VPNs, virtual private networks. So they had their employees communicating from home without a VPN.
So over the internet.
It's almost like standing in one building and shouting to your neighbor across there and hoping that nobody else hears. Right? And that's the reality. And there were lots of breaches, data breaches, the ransomware. Ransomware guys had a field year, I should say, or field 2 years. They made mass out of that period. We were totally unprepared for it. The same applies to children growing up. They don't understand, and maybe there's some education taking place at the primary school level. I'm not sure of the curriculum now, but I do believe that should start very early, and it should be consistent.
I'm still there, so I can tell you there's
absolutely
absolutely nothing when it comes to these things at that level. Even though I've been trying to for the past 10 years or so.
And you did speak about the Cyber Safe Day in February, and we know what October is. We're speaking in that regard.
National Cybersecurity
what do we do
Awareness.
After the month happens, or after the day happens? We don't.
Because it's not just the month or the day.
We don't turn the television off, right? We use these things every day. I don't know anybody today who might be, let's say, 50 or under, who doesn't interact with their device for a whole day. Nobody. I don't know if you can say the same, right?
Everybody.
And that's the truth.
Especially the older ones, again, they don't have the competencies to go on to the superhighway. And they have these devices and they use it to communicate with the children abroad and whatever. And
it's a risk. You open yourself up to a personal risk. But I do believe there should be some education programs coming out soon. I can share something with you, and maybe this is a little sneak peek. The country is moving towards some fairly large and impactful projects in digitization. Right? And you're going to be hearing about it very soon, where even the vulnerable in Trinidad and Tobago would be able to be reached, right, using technology. And there's a degree of safety, so they would need, of course, devices and so on to be able to connect. But through the use of technology, maybe services can reach those persons. Security will be a big factor there as well. So there will need to be education in that program. So I think that's something positive. Maybe if the education is handed together with a service, that can probably be more impactful.
Go hand in hand. Definitely. So as you mentioned that, the how Trinidad and Tobago is evolving. I think right before our interview started, I would have shared with you, just hot off the press, we just got information that a certain borough is going to now give free access to internet on the streets. Right? Now that is a positive way to go. But again, with that same point you just made there, given the service or given the technology without the training could be a very dangerous thing. What's your view on that one?
You give a 12-year-old a car to drive on the street, right? A sports car for that matter. You wouldn't. So you're absolutely right. I do believe, I'm not sure if it's available now, I think it is. But that's also a frightening thing. You're giving people there who, they may not have any sort of structured education around being cyber safe.
Competency.
Around being cyber safe. They may be educated people, but having that
public network,
having that competency around the use of technology, and then you're handing the technology, is almost it is putting a weapon in a madman's hand sometimes. So it's just to be cautious and careful with those things. I am not sure what the status or the state of that internet connectivity has where it has reached. But I do believe there should be some level of competency being passed on or training at least.
Right,
media publications and let it be consistent.
It have to be some kind of public advisory, because for them, some kind of training, maybe an online course or something at least that they should do before they access it, because to have the average person, as you say, just go it onto a public network, or even in some cases we have seen also where the hackers could have URLs or domains looking similar to this public one, and the average person may not know the difference between. They mightn't remember the whole long whatever connect whatever and get catch with these open networks, which again comes like a filter between the whatever the person trying to connect to as well, and their information being stolen as well.
Absolutely.
So I see it as a lot of risk. Again, the education side of things has to be hand in hand. But I guess I'm just a little biased to the education side of things, because it's, as I said, it's very close to my heart. People know how passionate I get, especially when it comes to educating people on the safe use of internet cybersecurity, especially from a young age. You know, many of the projects I've worked on, or the University of Harvard, University of Washington, you know, it had one called the Mobile Literacy Program that I work with the University of Washington for elderly people, you know, teaching them, all right, you have a mobile, it can do much more than you think it could, and this is how we do it in a safe way, you know. But these programs, not much people see the importance of it. Hopefully with programs like this, or if they get to see them, they know how important it is, and they sign up and they do these programs.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Anil, so as we come close to the end of the interview, right? Final. If you could send one cybersecurity tip to every device in Trinidad and Tobago, right? So I know you know a lot of tips, right? But if you could send one cybersecurity tip to every device in Trinidad, what would it be, and how would you make it catchy enough that people don't just swipe away? So, putting you on the spot there, but I know you could handle it.
I would probably start broad, but I would want to personalize it, right?
Yeah.
I would probably have some tags around it that says, you have a lot more exposed than you think you do.
Oh, yeah.
But I would want people to take a sort of mental inventory of where they are in terms of where they have information stored. And we're talking about the average domestic person here now, right? We're not talking about a company. A company should be more structured and have that sense of where assets are. But I would tell or encourage everybody to understand all of those areas that you have touched, that you may not have known and understood what you did share. And understand that and try to draw some boundaries around where you step. Else you lose control. And it's not to fear, it's not to create or instill fear. It's really to inculcate a responsible mind in the use of technology.
Yeah, definitely a place to start.
Yeah.
So once you become more aware now, and you get into the whole realm, or, as you say, it could stack up. Right? Once you start to learn, you will see, okay, so I need to fix this, I need to fix that, I need to get this, I need to learn more about this, you know? And so at least you need to start. So you need to be mindful, as your tip there, be mindful of your cyber, of your boundaries, of what you have out there and how you should protect it.
Yep.
And then you can take it from there. So that definitely is good advice, right? Coming from an expert in yourself. And before we close today, it will be remiss of me if I didn't congratulate your wife on her recent achievement. So for those who don't know, Anil's wife is Mrs. Sonia Mahesh Persad, right? And she recently received the Trinidad and Tobago National Award Medal of Merit Gold in Education and Nation Building. And I actually knew her longer than you, right? And I didn't know her even before I knew you. And I have seen that growth and all the contributions that she has. So I am very proud to be associated with her and you, of course, right? So congratulations to her.
Thank you so much.
So any closing comments?
No, I think Pandit, this is something very
And
positive.
just the first of many, so any things in the future, new things, because it's evolving, right? You're welcome on the program, right? Just reach out to me. We come and we try to educate and make aware. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I think this is something very positive. I do believe we should encourage persons just to understand, number one, because you are involved. Understand. That's very important. Don't think that you are a non-entity in this whole ecosystem. You're very much there, you're important. You're a user.
I think we pointed out that everybody could be a target. Anybody.
And it's really just as we would. I always draw the parallel between technology and dealing with people who are assets. You would take care of your children. You would take care of your family members. Take care of yourself, right? That's you do it and you share lots of things that you really don't know and understand. So really, I do want to promote the responsible use of technology.
Yeah.
And cyber is extremely, extremely important, not just to persons, companies, and a national level, but to the world as a whole. I think it's moving in directions that we can't envisage at this time. I'll be very happy to speak further. Anytime you want, I'll be, thank you for bringing me to this program. I would want to share maybe at the right time. We are involved in some fairly large national projects, very good initiatives that they can really change how we interact in Trinidad and Tobago. And you will be hearing more about it, as we have more, we are able to reveal more about that. But certainly I'll be willing to come to the program then and speak maybe in some more detail about that.
Of course. Welcome, anytime. Thanks
Most
a lot.
welcome. Sitaram.
Thank you very much for tuning in to this episode. I'm sure you got a lot of information concerning how you can keep yourself cyber safe, no matter if you're a very large corporation, small businesses, or even individually at your homes and at a personal level, how to keep yourself cyber secure. As we have discussed cybersecurity in this National Cybersecurity Awareness Month of October. This year, 2024, our theme is Secure Our World. And so we shared a lot of information of how you can secure your world. Until the next episode, signing off, Digital Guru Shiva.